And some people, you ever notice how, all of a sudden, someone's goes from being just a phone to being Fort Knox? It's like overnight. Some people, it became a top secret government device. Passwords changed, notifications turned off, and don't you dare even glance at the screen while it's lighting up. And some people, if a man is cheating, one of the things he will always do is become protective and secretive with his phone. That's not an opinion, that's a pattern. And some people, you don't even have to go snooping for it. It reveals itself. Now, and some people, I'm not talking about the usual, everyone deserves privacy kind of thing. We're all entitled to boundaries. I'm talking about the E-shift, the sudden shift. And some people, the guy who used to toss his phone on the bed while he went to the bathroom now takes it with him like it's glued to his hand. And some people, the guy who never cared if you scrolled through his Spotify playlist suddenly starts locking every app like it's carrying nuclear codes. That shift. And some people, and that's the part that matters, people get used to comfort. If he was comfortable around you with his device, and then he's suddenly not. And some people, it's not just a glitch, it's a message. Maybe not a message he's sending you directly, but it's a message his behavior is screaming. And sometimes our biggest mistake is trying to justify it. Oh, and some people, he's just been really busy. Maybe he's planning a surprise. Let me tell you something. People don't act sketchy to plan birthday parties. And some people, they don't hide phone calls and delete texts when they're being loyal. Loyalty is calm. Loyalty doesn't need to cover its tracks. And you'll notice something else. He becomes extra aware of where his phone is at all times. Like, unnaturally so. You might pick it up innocently. And some people, thinking it's yours, and his reaction is like you just tried to launch a missile. Or maybe it's face down every single time it's on the table. And some people opt, because when it lights up, he doesn't want you seeing that name or that message. You don't have to catch the text to know what's happening. And some people, it's the behavior that tells the truth before the phone ever does. Let me paint you a real moment. You're on the couch, maybe watching something together, and his phone goes off. Not once, not twice, but enough that it makes you curious. You glance, not even intentionally. It's human nature. You hear a sound, you look. And some people, and he notices, not the glance, but your curiosity. And from that day, you'll notice fewer sounds. Maybe notifications stop coming through entirely. Suddenly, and he's on Do Not Disturb mode 247. And when you ask about it, he's got a reason. I just don't like being distracted. Convenient. And some people. But he wasn't distracted before. You see, when someone is cheating, they live in fear of discovery. They don't just hide the act. They hide the trail. And the text messages, the call logs, the flirty DMs, all of that becomes potential evidence, and they know it. And some people. So the phone becomes their security blanket and their biggest liability at the same time. And some people, that's why you see this weird relationship develop between the man and his phone. It's not just a device anymore. It's a ticking time bomb. And some people, and he guards it with his life, he'll also do this subtle thing where he accuses you of being too nosy. It's a great little reversal, isn't it? And some people, you bring something up, maybe you ask why he's suddenly always on WhatsApp late at night. And he hits you with, and some people, why are you always checking up on me? That's not confusion. That's deflection. That's someone who doesn't want to have the real conversation. And some people. So he creates a fake one instead. It's manipulation dressed up as defense. But here's the part most people miss. You don't even need to catch him in the act. And simple, you don't need screenshots or to hire a private investigator or to go through his phone in the middle of the night. His actions tell you everything. The fear and the secrecy, the protectiveness, those are the red flags, not just because he's doing something wrong, but because he's no longer allowing space for honesty. And some people, when honesty leaves the room, everything that follows becomes performance. And he's not just living a double life. He's dragging you into a version of reality where you're no longer invited to the truth. So often, we silence our instincts because we don't want to be that person, the suspicious one, the one who doubts, the one who overthinks. And some people, but your instincts aren't overthinking, they're picking up the parts of the story that don't add up. You feel the shift because it's real. And some people, and you feel the distance because it's growing, and you feel the secrecy because it's happening right in front of you. And some people, it's not about invading privacy, it's about noticing when trust starts to rot at the edges. Because if he used to be open, and now he's not, something changed. And some people, and if that change isn't something you're part of, chances are someone else is. And that's the part we can't ignore. One of the most telling signs that a man might be cheating isn't necessarily what he says, it's what he does with his time. If there's one thing that will always give someone away, it's their routine. Human beings are creatures of habit, especially when they're in a relationship. We get into a rhythm, texts at certain times, phone calls on lunch breaks, Sunday mornings together, date nights, every other Friday. These patterns become part of the relationship's rhythm. So when that rhythm suddenly shifts, and not for any clear or logical reason, you have to start asking yourself why. It usually starts subtly. He says he's got to stay late at work a few nights in a row. Maybe he's suddenly overwhelmed with meetings or projects that didn't seem to exist before. Or there's this new coworker who constantly needs his help. And at first, you want to be understanding. Of course you do. You trust him. You believe in his ambitions. You don't want to be controlling. So you support it. You give him space. You remind yourself, this is what people do in healthy relationships. They give each other room to breathe. But slowly, things start to unravel. That quality time you used to share, it gets replaced with vague plans. I'll try to make it, becomes his new favorite phrase. Let's play it by ear. He used to be present, used to care about putting in effort. But now everything feels last minute, like he's squeezing you in rather than prioritizing you. And it's not about being busy. People make time for what matters to them, even in chaos. It's about where you land on his list. You'll start noticing that his availability is now always conditional. He's constantly exhausted or swamped. There's this vague fog around his schedule. If you ask, it's never a straightforward answer. I'm not sure when I'll be done, or something just came up. But that's the thing. Cheating requires time. It requires logistics, space to breathe, and a bit of a disappearing act. So when his availability becomes inconsistent, it's not just bad scheduling, it's a clue. The deception doesn't stop at making himself unavailable. It extends to justifying it in ways that make you question yourself. He might say, you know how important this project is to me, or I wish you supported me more right now. He turns your concern into criticism. And suddenly, instead of asking the real question, why are you never around anymore? You start wondering if you're being too needy. But you're not. You're asking for the same connection that once came effortlessly. Let me tell you something. A man who's cheating is not just making space for someone else. He's stealing time from you. And he's clever about it. He might create these small windows of presence, short, intense moments where he shows up, gives just enough, then disappears again. And because you've been starved of time and attention, those small moments feel huge. You start clinging to the crumbs, thinking it's a feast. That's how manipulation works. It makes you grateful for things you used to expect. Sometimes the shift isn't just time, it's energy. Or he might still be around physically, but emotionally he's checked out. You sit next to him, but he's scrolling. You talk, but he's distracted. There's this growing distance between you, and it's not about being busy. It's about no longer wanting to be there. in the same way. When someone is building something with someone else, the connection you once had begins to fade. Not because it wasn't real, but because it's no longer where his heart is. And here's the kicker: if you try to point any of this out, he'll often make you feel unreasonable. You're being paranoid. You're always on my case. And suddenly, it's your fault for noticing. But deep down, you know. Because your gut doesn't lie. Your body feels the absence before your mind can explain it. Your heart recognizes the change before your brain has caught up. We've been trained to believe that asking for consistency is asking for too much. It's not. Consistency is love's best friend. It's not about someone being available every minute. It's about knowing where you stand, knowing that when they say they'll be there, they mean it. When someone starts creating confusion where there was once clarity, that's not love, it's evasion. A man who's cheating needs that confusion. He thrives on it. Because the more unclear things are, the easier it is to maintain two lives. He can't give you full access to his time because someone else is already taking it. And the tragedy is, by the time you realize what's happening, you've already started blaming yourself. But let me be really clear about something. You didn't change. He did. The routine changed. The consistency vanished. And that's not on you. Your only mistake was believing that love alone would be enough to hold someone who was already letting go. You don't have to be a detective to know when someone is pulling away. You just have to trust what the silence, the sudden schedule changes, and the distance are already telling you. When a man is cheating, he doesn't just hide where he's going or who he's talking to. He starts pulling away from you emotionally. It's one of those things that can creep in so subtly you don't even notice it at first. Conversations that used to flow easily now feel forced. You share something meaningful, and instead of engaging, he gives you a half-hearted, "That's nice," or just nods and keeps looking at his phone. And then you're left sitting there thinking, am I being boring? Or did I say something wrong? But the truth is, you haven't changed. His emotional presence has. There's a coldness that starts to seep into the space between you. It doesn't always look like silence. It can look like sarcasm, irritation, or dismissiveness. You might notice he gets annoyed at little things that never used to bother him. Maybe he rolls his eyes when you ask a question, or he seems constantly distracted when you're speaking. These reactions aren't just signs of stress or being busy. More often than not, they're symptoms of guilt trying to find a place to hide. Because when someone knows they're doing something wrong, one of the easiest ways to deal with the internal conflict is to disconnect from the person they're betraying. That emotional distance isn't accidental. It's self-preservation on his part. Because to cheat and still look you in the eyes every day, still sit across the table from you and hear about your day, still pretend everything is normal, that requires a level of detachment. He has to shut down parts of himself to keep doing what he's doing. And one of the first casualties is the emotional bond between you. But what's really tricky is when that emotional distance gets hidden behind defensiveness. You try to talk about what you're feeling, and suddenly it becomes an argument. You say, "I just feel like you're not here anymore," and he responds with, "I'm tired," or worse, "Why are you always starting something?" And now the conversation isn't about your feelings anymore. It's about your tone, or your timing, or how you're making him feel. That's not emotional honesty. That's avoidance dressed up as frustration. And the thing is, it's exhausting for you. Because you're trying to connect. You're trying to understand. You're trying to keep the relationship alive. But he's not meeting you halfway. You feel like you're begging for scraps of attention, for any sign that he still cares the way he used to. And deep down, you know something's off, because the man who used to open up to you, who used to be vulnerable and present, has been replaced by someone you barely recognize, someone whose walls are suddenly sky high, someone who acts like every conversation is a chore. Sometimes he even flips it around. He'll say things like, "You've been distant lately," or "I feel like you're the one pulling away." It's a clever trick. He knows something's changed, but instead of taking responsibility, he shifts the narrative. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're the one being dramatic. And in trying to defend yourself, you lose track of the original issue, his distance, his defensiveness, his emotional absence. And I want to say something really important here. Emotional distance isn't just a side effect of cheating. It's often a deliberate strategy. Because the more emotionally unavailable he becomes, the harder it is for you to reach him. The harder it is for you to ask questions, to feel safe enough to challenge what's happening. He creates a kind of emotional fog, and in that fog, he hides. You may even find yourself missing the version of him that used to light up around you. The one who listened to you ramble about your day. The one who laughed with you in the car. The one who held your hand just because. And when those moments start to disappear, it's not just the absence you feel, it's the grief. Grief for the connection that once felt effortless. For the safety that's now replaced by second guessing. And maybe worst of all, you start to doubt yourself. You think, maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe this is just what happens in relationships. But no. What you're expecting is what he used to give. And what you're feeling isn't neediness. It's the emotional void that happens when someone starts giving their energy to someone else. When a man is cheating, his guilt rarely looks like an apology. It more often shows up as frustration, as silence, as coldness, as blame. Because if he can convince you to stop asking questions, he can keep doing what he's doing without facing the consequences. But emotional connection doesn't just fade on its own. It doesn't disappear without a reason. People don't go from sharing their heart to shutting down overnight, unless something else has taken its place. And if you're feeling that distance, if you're reaching out and getting nothing back, if your vulnerability is met with irritation instead of intimacy, that's not just a rough patch. That's a warning sign, one that's asking you to pay attention before the silence becomes permanent. It's a strange thing, isn't it? How someone who's been distant, secretive, maybe even cold for weeks, suddenly becomes the most affectionate version of themselves. Out of nowhere, he's buying you gifts, planning surprise dinners, telling you how beautiful you look when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. And at first, it feels like things are getting better. It feels like he's finally coming back around. You think, maybe I was wrong. Maybe he's just been stressed. Maybe we're getting back to us. But when a man is cheating, this kind of affection often isn't love. It's guilt dressed up as romance. Guilt is powerful. It doesn't always push people to confess. It pushes them to compensate. And one of the most common things a cheating man will do is try to overcorrect his behavior to hide the truth. He knows, deep down, that he's not showing up in the way he used to. He knows you feel it. So instead of being honest, he tries to distract you. With flowers. With, "I've been thinking about you all day," texts. With random acts of kindness that feel almost too perfect, too polished. Like someone playing a role, hoping the performance will be convincing enough to make you stop asking questions. It's emotional sleight of hand, a magic trick. Look over here, at the compliments, the gestures, the sudden attention. So you don't look over there, at what's actually going on. And because you want to believe it, you lean into it. You tell yourself, this is the version of him I love. Maybe we just needed to reconnect. You start convincing yourself that this is progress, when in reality, it might just be a distraction. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that every kind gesture is manipulation, but it's the pattern that matters. When affection starts to show up after a period of distance, or secrecy, or conflict, it's worth asking, is this coming from love, or is this coming from guilt? One of the clearest signs is when these gestures feel disconnected from emotional closeness. Like, he's buying you a necklace, but he hasn't asked how you're doing in days. He's planning a weekend trip, but he won't sit still for a real conversation. It's like he's checking off boxes on a list called Make Her Stop Wondering. The intimacy is missing, even in the middle of all the romantic effort. You feel seen, maybe, but not understood. You feel appreciated, but not known. There's a heaviness to it, too. You sense that something's off, even when things look good on the surface. And that's the thing. Cheating doesn't always show up in the form of absence. Sometimes it shows up in excess, too much charm, too much over-the-top affection. It feels like he's trying to win you over again, but not in the natural, playful way you fell for in the first place. This version is calculated. There's pressure behind it, like he's trying to make up for something, and even though he hasn't said what that is, or you can feel it in the way he's looking at you. You might even catch yourself asking, why now? Why is he suddenly going out of his way? Why is he being so attentive after weeks of being unavailable, cold, or distracted? That question matters. Because when someone's love for you is real, consistent, and grounded, it doesn't need to arrive in a grand gesture to be felt. It's in the everyday, the way he listens, shows up, and shares the truth. But when love starts arriving in spikes, after long valleys of distance, it's not consistency, it's damage control. Some men don't have the emotional capacity to face the pain they've caused. So they try to buy their way out of it, with gestures, with sex, with sudden enthusiasm. They create just enough doubt in your mind to make you pause, to make you hold on a little longer. And in that pause, they buy themselves more time. Time to figure out how to keep the lie going. Time to make you second guess the very instincts that were trying to protect you. And I want to say this, when your intuition is telling you something's off, it usually is, even if you can't prove it. Even if he's standing there with roses in his hands and calling you, babe, like nothing's wrong. The human heart doesn't lie. When we feel love, we know it. When we feel disconnection, we know that too. But when disconnection suddenly gets papered over with grand gestures, it creates confusion. It creates this false hope that maybe things are turning around, when really you're just being pulled deeper into a story that isn't true. It's not about the gifts. It's not about the compliments. It's about why they're showing up now and what's missing underneath them. Love doesn't hide behind shiny things. It lives in truth. It lives in consistency. It lives in accountability. If he's cheating, he's not trying to build something with you. He's trying to stop you from noticing that it's already falling apart. And if you can feel that, even through the flowers and the sudden affection, then you already know the truth you're afraid to say out loud.